All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is what day is it, Arlen? It's Monday. It's not an Arlen Tuesday. It's an
It's
Arlen
Arlen
Monday.
Monday.
Are you confused?
Yeah, I am kind of confused, but yeah, last time I looked, it is Monday, and I did change the clock, so I think I'm okay.
We did have to change the clocks, I guess, a Sunday morning. It was everything's confusing for me. Usually it's a Carlos Monday. We've talked about how Carlos has taken on a new position and he's still working around that, and also his podcast, The Left-Handed Leftist. So we're hoping to get Carlos back on a regular time and day, but we'll see if that happens. Arlen doing yeoman's duty, filling in today, Monday. We won't therefore have Arlen tomorrow. In fact, you won't have Hal either. Tomorrow will be a day off for me. And Arlen, really weird. Let me just start with this. You asked me what I did over the weekend. It was kind of weird. You brought up daylight savings time. You spring forward, of course. It means you lose an hour. But I kind of had a wash because I drove my son from D.C. area to his new job in Bowling Green, Kentucky, home of the Western Kentucky University Hilltoppers. And by driving through Tennessee, we actually crossed the time zone into the central zone, and therefore I gained an hour, which I promptly lost. So I'm not sure whether I lost time or gained it or neither or both.
Yeah. By the way, how did your son find this job?
Well, he is getting a master's in sports management, and through the auspices of Georgetown University, where he's a student, they have all sorts of resources and different websites and different, I guess, postings at the university's graduate school's site. So that's, I think, where he found it. And so he's still taking a class. He's taking one class virtually rather than in person. And that's like the new education. It's so different now, Arlen. A lot of the kids, they don't even go into the school at all. They may not even be in the same time zone. They're taking classes. They call it asynchronously. Did I say it right?
Probably not, but it sounds kind of sad to me. I mean, the fact that college students are not getting into the university and living there and getting the experience of being with other people, it doesn't, to me, doesn't sound like a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. Although he's in grad school, so it's a little different. It's a master,
Yeah.
So that kind of has a history where people work, they go to classes part-time, they work part-time, they juggle. So it's not quite the same as the undergrad experience being lost. But even so, I think there's great value in learning together, being in the same classroom with your professor, with the other students. And to a degree, that's certainly been lost.
Well, that's a whole big thing too that people are talking about, the fact that we're so tied to our phones and the internet and everything like that, that we don't really have a chance to meet other people, and there's this statistics on that are very sad. I mean, that men are not meeting women and women are not meeting men, and there's bad things going on, and no one's apparently going to do anything about it at this moment.
Well, it is very unfortunate, but I will say this, it's kind of a little bit of a silver line to the cloud you just described. We had a really nice trip out to Bowling Green, went through Tennessee, went to see a basketball game at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, then Nashville. Now, this is a red state. We talked about it. Tennessee has a really good education system. It's certainly on the come up, and we've seen that with some other red states. Everyone was so friendly, warm, gracious, both in Tennessee and Kentucky, also Southwest Virginia, where we spent the first night. So, Arlen, I mean, I know there's a lot of partisanship and we all tend on the left. Many do, not me, but many others look down, look askance at somebody who might have voted for Trump. And obviously on the other side of the aisle, they do that to libs and Dems. But, we're all Americans. We got to get along. And it seems like there's lots of really good folks. And I've never doubted it in the heartland.
Yeah, I certainly don't doubt anything you say, and I'm not surprised about any of it, because if you go across the country, there are good people all over the country. Unfortunately, it's the leaders that we've selected and the government who are messing things up, and the media, but as a whole, the American people are still nice. They care about others. That they're willing to help out other people. But it's unfortunately it's these institutions are crumbling and making things a lot worse.
Well, you
for the
sound just
American
like
people.
me, Arlen. I think I've really gotten to you. Even though you're the thought leader, in this case, I've led a little bit, maybe in terms of change in I guess mindset, and that's sort of our goal here. Really, is to come up with ways to work together. That's what Halitics is all about. Find out ways we can work together, cross the aisle, across every line there is: sex line, gender line, race line, ethnicity, the whole thing, to get the kind of government that we do deserve, one that guarantees us health care, guarantees us a safe place to live, education. I don't think there's any question that that's what we want. And unfortunately, as you point out, bad leaders, we don't get it, right, Arlen?
Yeah, I mean, all those things you say are very true and certainly something that we should strive for. But it's not going to happen with the current government we have now. They're not interested in everybody getting along and being happy and those good things being passed that will help people. Right now, we're in a very bad place with very angry population and a government that it's all for the rich and it doesn't really care about working people.
No question about it. All right, 240-242-5646 if you want to join Arlen and me in today's program. Very bad news from Iran. I'm going to play a video for you in just a moment describing how bad things are there as a direct result of the U.S.-Israeli war launched without provocation. Honestly, we'll get to that in just a sec. But don't forget, click like, click subscribe, any type of interaction with the videos. We really, really appreciate it. And I've seen other hosts, they say the same thing I do. We all say it. Just click that. Look, get me up to 5. I just want 500 subscribers. I was at 490, Arlen. Now I'm at 489. I'm not sure. Sometimes I wonder, do people unsubscribe? They do. But also, what's interesting about that Google? Now, I think people who maybe they subscribed a long time ago, they see a video I did, or maybe I'm very critical of Israel. Some of the people who subscribe don't like that. They are supporters of Israel. I think that causes me some loss, some hemorrhaging, if you will, of support. But also, Google just does pluck people out and apparently they have this algorithm that tells whether, or they just keep track of whether people who are subscribers ever click. And if like a year goes by and they totally ignore my channel, then they will be dropped. That's apparently the case. So,
well, you're asking good questions and you may be right, but I think it needs a little bit more investigation because, we should know a little bit more about how it works.
About the algorithm. Well, I think they told me that. I think I actually found a page or something where Google said, yeah, your subscribers, you may see your numbers drop now and then, partly because we are going to drop people who just don't have any connection to the site. And I'm good with that. I love that. I have no problem with that. By the way, going to say hey to Ken, who's in the chat. Hey, Ken, good to see you. All right. So told you about Iran. Yeah, I mean, I've said this. I think Trump keeps doing the worst thing he ever did. 12,555, according to this Al Jazeera headline. By the way, this is pretty darn current. Earlier today, Arlen, and I do want to play a video. I had to go to Al Jazeera. The U.S. newspapers, and I guess this is understandable. When you Google Iran war casualties or Iranian deaths, the New York Times immediately tells you how many Americans are reported dead. I think the number's either 7 or 8, maybe up to 8 now. We've killed like 140 times that number.
Not only that, let's not forget about that school with all the girls in it where that was bombed and all, hundreds of these students were killed. And of course, we're investigating it right now, but it's pretty clear. I think the New York Times has pretty much affirmed it, that it was our bombs that destroyed that school.
So awful.
It's awful. Worse than awful. Yeah.
It's an atrocity. No question. All right. We're going to play this video here. This is from Al Jazeera. Let's get the video
But
part of
first,
that
we are going to be
headline we showed
speaking
you.
to Iran's health minister, Ali Jafarian, who's the deputy health minister, in fact, joining us from Tehran now to get an update on the casualty figures after 9 days of war. Minister, thank you very much for joining us on Al Jazeera. It's been 9 days now since the conflicts began, since the attacks, the U.S.-Israeli attacks began on Iran. Can you give us an update on the casualties, the number of people killed and injured in these past 9 days?
Yeah, good day. Thank you for the time. I can very briefly introduce to you what has happened in the past 9 days. We have had more than 12,000 people wounded and 1,255 people killed, aging from 8 months to 88 years old. 200 of those people who were killed are women, and 200 are less than 18. And as everybody know, 168 children were killed in the Minab Elementary School. We have 55 healthcare workers wounded and 11 killed, including 4 physicians, 2 nurses, and 3 emergency workers.
All right, so yeah, there we go. And I try to there was a lot more casualty reports,
sure.
but I think that's kind of the bottom line. He does mention the girls' school that was hit, Arlen, and despite Trump's claim initially anyway, and Israel's claim that it was likely friendly fire, it almost seems certain it was the U.S. that launched the missile. By the way, just real quick, hey, CP in the chat, CP pointing out the Democrats, too, have been supporting this attack on Iran. And yes, that is correct. In fact, I'm going to get to that a little bit later in the program, but I did want to center your comment there. Arlen, you, at the Big Picture Report, you attribute, as do others, that this attack, you think it's a tail wagging the dog event. Is that right? That Trump is trying to distract us from the Epstein files. That's your view?
There's no doubt in my mind. I think they were getting very close to finding information about Trump, and he knew that his presidency, was in danger. So he said, "What can I do?" And of course, the perfect thing to do to distract people is start a war. And so he started a war. And another thing. I think Trump and maybe some others in administration are saying, well, maybe the Iranian people will rise up and become democratic or something like that. But it's exactly the opposite. As the Iranian people see us destroy their entire country, they're not going to be supporting us. And and just the fact that everybody has a different reason. Right after the war started, Rubio would say that here's the reason, and somebody else will say another reason, and nobody really got their message clear. Certainly Trump didn't. And then we're stuck where we are now, and it's going to be really hard to get out of it, and certainly without more and more people being killed. And of course, what's happening in our country. The gas prices are shooting up. Stock market is falling. It's a disaster.
Yeah, this is a meme that I'm always, Arlen mentioned, always very skeptical of these types of memes that don't provide sources. I don't want to spread fake news, but I did some research. This apparently is correct according to Google Stats or whatever they call themselves. They have some sort of an arm. The number of searches has really dropped to 95% in the past 10 days. Yeah. Because of the war that Trump launched along with Netanyahu. So it does seem like it's pretty clearly was done, at least in part. Certainly one function, one benefit from Trump's perspective is people aren't talking about his relationship with Epstein, how Epstein died. Apparently, Trump, Arlen, you said that there's I don't know. I didn't see this story, and I don't want to say I credit it, but there's evidence that some guard who was supposed to be protecting Epstein at Rikers was deposited a whole bunch of money into some bank account right before Epstein was found dead.
And was Googling Trump just prior to, when that so-called suicide happened. So, yeah, there are indications that they're not just very innocent people. They probably were, there's a lot of evidence to indicate that they may have caused his so-called suicide, in quotes.
Well, somebody got to him is, I guess, the theory, and it seems awfully unlikely that Epstein just committed suicide out of the blue, that he wasn't assisted in doing so, or that there wasn't somebody who actually went into that cell and just killed him outright. I would say it's much more likely that happened than that Epstein just suddenly felt guilty and decided to kill himself. 240-242-5646 if you want to join us, 240-242-5646. One thing that really disturbs me about this meme, and I'm going to put it up again, Arlen, is that somehow Trump made a bet, assuming that was his motivation, or a significant part of the motivation was, let's stop talking about Epstein. What really I find so troubling about that, so upsetting about a bet that Trump apparently won, is that the American people aren't roundly condemning the attack on Iran. It seems to me that, yes, obviously his close relationship with a trafficker of underage girls is really awful, and we should all condemn it. But so is it to launch a war unprovoked against a country that is not threatening us, is not a risk to us, and that in at least one sense is performing a very important mission, which is kind of sort of holding Israel a little bit accountable. There's no one else in the Middle East who has any ability to really hurt Israel. So, I mean, Trump shouldn't be getting a benefit from this. It should just be one more thing that the American people look at in abject horror.
Well, I think I could explain it, Hal. In one of my articles was by Robert Reich, showing how the administration is pushing the media outlets to, more in favor of Trump. They're taking over and trying to buy out some of these networks. CBS is going downhill. CNN might be bought out. So the American people are not getting an objective account in the mass media, I don't think. And then that would certainly explain things. And also, I want to say, I do remember very well how much emphasis there was on the Epstein files up until Trump decided to invade, and all of a sudden the Epstein stuff just disappeared. It went away. And so, that's why Google would say 95% of interest in that particular subject dropped, because the mass media loves a war, and they'll concentrate on everything about it, and they dropped obviously what's going on with the Epstein files. And I hope some people pay more attention to that and go back to the Epstein files, because the evidence is probably even more than it used. There's more of it than there used to be.
Well, we don't have a vibrant, competitive media market with lots of different participants. I know we do have the internet, and so I can do this, and other folks can take on the administration, take on the Democrats, yes. But that said, even so, we're so dependent on YouTube, and people get demonetized all the time if they violate, some rule that Zionist Sheryl Sandberg imposed at Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Sergey Brin obviously doesn't want to run afoul of the administration. Amazon has tremendous power. So there really are just a few players with tremendous influence, and therefore it's easy for them to prevent the word to get out, the words to get out that we rely on. So, Arlen, my question to you is, how much blame should we assess against Bill Clinton and other Democrats who supported media deregulation, allowing for the consolidation of all this media, allowing for, one TV station and a market, one company to own all the media in a market, and that ultimately paved the way for what we have now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think all that is important. All that has made things a lot worse. The Supreme Court especially has made things worse. And, given everything, that Trump wants, and everything to people who have big money. And there's no question about it. I mean, the Trump administration follows the media very closely. Trump, watches TV all the time, Fox News, and even things like Bill Maher and some kind of programs that aren't exactly, the kind that you might expect. So they're very careful about that. They're working on trying to get rid of a lot of the, liberal news media. And so far, they've been able to do it. to a certain extent and probably will continue to do so.
All right, 240-242-5646. If you want to join us, we'd love to talk to you. And yeah, Reich says, I have a issue with this. Is from, by the way, the bigpicturereport.com, where Arlen blogs, and he comments, but he also reposts a lot of his favorites work, including, I'm going to just name them for people, although we're not talking about Nick Kristof today. He's one of Arlen's favorites, along with Robert Reich, Tom Hartman. I think they're the ones I see the most, but also often Common Dreams makes its appearances. Sometimes Hartman publishes in Common Dreams, but not always. So Arlen, Reich says that this mega media monopoly, which I guess is Paramount, which is owned by the Ellison family, Larry Ellison, maybe the richest man in the world. We don't really know. He is up there in the $200 billion club, along with Musk, and I guess now third place goes to the Amazon founder, Bezos. So my question is, I didn't really read all this. What does Reich think we can do to stop it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't even know if I got to the end where he decides.
because I don't really get a sense that he tells us. I mean, it's not just that you missed it. It's just, it's not clear that he even gives you a roadmap for stopping it.
Yeah, well, that's true. There's, the problem is that all the networks know that if they want to, obtain a new, Paramount or whatever, they have to get approval by the government to expand. And the only way the government's going to let them do that is if they play along with the government. So they're willing to give up their independence and their objectivity in order to gain money, which is what, of course, our society is all about. And then you get, you get what we're getting now, which is more and more leaning to the right, and a lot less of another point of view.
Well, it's pernicious in so many different ways, because as these media Goliaths get larger and larger, the people at the very top who make the decisions, the CEO, maybe the board of they're richer and richer people. They have more and more assets, and so their interests align more and more closely with Trump's. They have less and less reason to take Trump on. They see themselves on the same, with the same interests, and also they both share an interest in taking on labor and bringing down workers and reducing everyone else's power. So it's just, and then they want to do Trump favors because, as you point out, he'll allow them to consolidate, because they'll be giving a message that he appreciates, which is, again, goes back to deregulation. If you have lots, look, I owned a media station in Monterey, and I'm privileged. I'm definitely very comfortable, but not like not nowhere near billionaire class or centimillionaire or anything like that. You could have middle class. There have been in the past middle class media owners in this country, media owners. That's pretty much gone. The people who own media have almost identical interests to the president, and that is incredibly bad. Incredibly harmful.
You said before, there is still free speech, and there really is. There's people like you. There's others that are, have the freedom to put out their point of view that may be different than Trump and the Republicans. But the fact is, the big people, the ones that have the most clout, the ones that have the most listeners, the most viewers are getting more and more, they're just reaching more and more people and making things worse, just like
they have the loudest megaphone. And if people who are, there was a guy named Guy Christensen who built an enormous following on TikTok, pointing out the evils of the Israeli attack and the Israeli occupation in Gaza and the genocide. And ultimately, he was a big reason that TikTok was, forced into some type of sale, because they wanted to get rid of him, and they did. So if you do build a big audience and you're too critical of the current powers, then you're done. They'll get rid of you. They'll figure out a way to get rid of you. I'm going to just make sure I got that name right. It is indeed Guy Christensen, who also, by the way, successfully, he was outed as an Ohio State University student, Arlen, and he was expelled, or at least he was put on administrative leave and forbidden to even go to class. But he sued, and with the help of the ACLU, and that decision was reversed. It's a good thing. The court said no, you can't.
Yeah, there are good judges out there who are ruling the right way, but they just don't have the power and the clout to really do a lot compared to what the Trump administration is able to do. By the way, I have a question for you, Hal. I mean, have you heard anything about how the people in Israel feel about Netanyahu and what's going on? Because they're starting to get hit. There's bombs going into Israel, and it'd be interesting to see what the Israelis think about that. But I haven't seen anything.
I haven't seen any kind of polling done, but my understanding and my guess is that this is exactly the same as it's been for years. The Israelis don't particularly like Netanyahu. They don't give him a majority of their votes. They have problems with his corruption. They have problems with his incompetence, but ultimately they support repression of Palestinians. They support Israel, the Israeli army, the Israeli military. The Israeli military itself, I believe, has very high polling numbers, despite the atrocities it commits. And one reason for that, Arlen, is because they have that mandatory military service. So pretty much everyone, except for the ultra-Orthodox, served in the military. And so they're very loath to call out the institution that they're a part of. Their kids were part of, their parents were a part of. And so that's part of it. And the ultra-Orthodox, well, the army does exactly what it wants them to do. It's key. It protects them, and it protects their settlements in the West Bank, and oppresses the Palestinian people. So,
it's really, it's really a bad thing. And right now, the American people, as far as I know, do not support the war in Iran. Although you don't see it emphasized very much, but every poll I've seen is that the majority of people think it's been a bad idea. And that's probably going to get worse, because with the gas prices going up, with the stock market going down, with food prices going up and everything else, there'll be more reason to realize that the Trump administration has no clue what they're doing, and it's not going to end well.
Well, we'll talk about gas prices too. I have a little bit to say about that as well. But here we have Tara Dublin. This is also from the Big Picture Report. The Party of Family Values, this goes to the wagging the dog issue that Trump launched the war to stop any speculation about his crimes with Epstein. The Party of Family Values just covered up unspeakable crimes by Tara Dublin in Raw Story. And then you note the Iran war was all about distracting from the fact we already talked about that Trump is about to be identified as a child sex offender. And you also call out the media. All very, very correct, Arlen. Well done. She says, I wanted to show this, though. I really wanted to sort of center this claim, because it's also something that my guess is that you may have read and approved of. And so assuming that's the case, and even if it isn't, I'm still going to take it on. I'm going to take on the allegation to a degree, not completely. I don't fully disagree with this statement. But this is what Tara Dublin says in Raw Story that you cross-posted. If this week has proven anything, it's that the entire Republican Party, minus Thomas Massie of Kentucky, is guilty of treason and manufacturing a war with Iran to deflect from being accessories to the sexual assault of women and children. Well, I guess to deflect from Trump being identified. So you, I assume, agree with that. Would you throw Rand Paul in as someone else who shouldn't be accused of being guilty of treason, since he also voted against the war in the Senate?
I feel pretty confident saying that 99% of the Republicans are pretty bad and evil and going along with these crimes. Yeah, there's a few exceptions. Massie is still, he was looking very closely at the Epstein files, and Rand Paul voted, he was the only Republican that voted, against, going against.
Well, he voted to require congressional authorization or approval of strikes, and that was in the Senate. And Massie and one other Republican whose name escapes me now in the House, I believe an Ohio Republican voted to require congressional authorization. So there actually were 2 Republicans in Congress. What about those Democrats, though, that supported it? Now, because there wasn't unanimous opposition, Arlen, are they also traitors?
I think they are. I think that the what's his name? The Pennsylvania senator. I think he needs to go.
Fetterman,
and he's not a Democrat. He seems more of a Republican. So I just I don't know what more we can say, but definitely Congress is still afraid of Trump, and they're still afraid. The Republicans are scared that he will primary them, and he no doubt will try. So they're not willing to break with him yet. But But right now it looks like to me that the midterm elections might be really favorable for the Democrats, but I'm not so sure that Trump's going to allow those elections to even happen. We have to wait and see.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much power he has to stop them, and there's going to be a lot of pushback. But yeah, he seems to be doing what he can, which is considerable, to keep the thumb on the scale for the Republicans going forward. There are the 4 infamous Democrats who voted with the Republicans, voted with the president. Now, to be fair, if they had all voted to require authorization from Congress, I think the bill still would have failed by 1 vote, but I might be wrong about that. So there, Jared Golden of Maine. By the way, Jared Golden of Maine, I believe he considered an independent. Maybe he's a Democrat, caucuses with the Democrats. Not sure about that. AOC, one of some people's favorites, has spoken very highly of Jared Golden, saying, well, he supports Medicare for all. He did support it kind of in 2020, and since then has been nowhere to be found. But AOC looking desperately to find something nice to say about a guy who just voted for Trump to kill people in Iran with zero accountability to Congress.
I'm sure I could say with confidence that AOC is not for this war.
No, she is not. To be fair to her, she has not been on the wrong side of this issue as she is on so many. Well, it's not really fair. She's not really on this wrong side. She kind of plays, she does the triangulation. She kind of tries to see both sides of it sometimes. Well, I'll vote for Israel to be able to defend itself, just not for it to be able to kill Palestinians.
No,
that's her.
She's very wise. She knows what she's doing. If she's going to have a future, as a possible presidential candidate or anything else, she's got to not be too extreme. And so she'll try to be, a little bit toward the moderate side on some issues, maybe. But she's about as progressive a representative as there is in Congress.
There you go. 2 senators crossed the aisle in Wednesday's vote. Fetterman, as we mentioned, voted against requiring Trump to seek congressional approval before launching strikes. And Rand Paul, as we mentioned, voted to require that. So go Rand Paul, on that issue.
Yeah, and Fetterman, I think there's something wrong with Fetterman. I mean, if you look at the way he acts, the way he does things, he's not normal. Let's put it that way. And I think I'd like to see him gone and somebody a little bit more reliable as a Democratic senator in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it would appear that his stroke somehow damaged his brain, but he may have been like that before. It's hard to know.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely different, and people, and hard to figure out. But I think he's not reliable at all. If you want some good votes and some, for him to be supportive of the Democratic Party.
All right. The topic today, the thumbnail, Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end. Are we really going? Or are signs pointing to Armageddon, as I indicate in the description, and I sadly think they are. You mentioned gas prices, Arlen. I was going to talk a little bit about James Tallarico, who I did a call for. I did say I would vote for in Texas. There's some real problems with Tallarico. I don't want to talk. Maybe we'll get to that later in the program. You mentioned this. Gasoline prices. So let's talk a little bit about the rise of price in gasoline. Of course, I will have a very contrarian take from everybody virtually about this, but you're somewhat optimistic this could hurt Republicans and Trump in the midterms, correct, Arlen?
Oh, I'm very sure it will, and not only gas, but it's going to up the prices of everything. You go in the grocery store, you buy certain things at other stores. It's all inflation is going to keep rising, and this war is going to make it that much worse.
Well, presumably you're right. I mean, it does show here 17% prices are up, but of course, if we stop the bombing, then the oil will start flowing out of the Straits of Hormuz. And there's so much oil; the world is really afloat in a sea of oil. There's the Venezuelan oil coming online, and 70% seems like a lot, but it really isn't. It really isn't that big a jump. I mean, in a time of inflation, everything can hurt. But I want to just show this chart from that article in the New York Times. You can see if you look at the right of the chart, Arlen, there's just a little blip up. I mean, we've been seeing prices trending down since mid-22. And there's a little blip here now where the price has gone up to $3.48 a gallon, which, by the way, I noticed when I don't buy gasoline because I have an electric car. But when we drove my son's car, and he does have a gas-powered vehicle, so we were buying gas quite a bit. We had to for the long drives.
Sure.
And I did notice the price did seem a little higher than I had expected it would be to fill up his tank. But yeah, it's not that big a jump, $3.48. I mean, remember, Arlen, in 2009, 2010, I think in Monterey, we were looking at $5.40, $5.50 a gallon.
Yeah, but I think the difference is Trump promised gas prices to go down. Obviously, they're not going down, they're going up. And a lot of people are really affected by what they pay at the gas pump. There's a lot of people in this country that don't have very much money, and they do notice these price increases. And it obviously is going to disturb and worry a lot of people. So I think it's significant enough. And as well, in fact, Trump isn't doing hardly anything that he promised. He promised, all these prices would go down, that we wouldn't get into wars. I mean, he's doing it the opposite of what he campaigned on. So no wonder his approval rating is down.
I think real wages had started to creep up again towards the end of 25 and in early 26, but that will likely change again with the price of gasoline going up.
And I'm sure you noticed
Ken says, doomsday, I just want to interrupt, sorry, real quick, because this goes that doomsday clock is at 85 seconds to midnight. So yeah, it's often between 11:58 and 11:59. That sounds about right. Ken says also, AOC is not that great. I totally disagree, Arlen. She doesn't try hard enough at all. Yes. Well, you're going to have even though you're the thought leader, some people aren't going to follow, Arlen.
Well, name me somebody who is more progressive than AOC.
We've talked about this. I think Summer Lee right now in Congress is definitely to the left of AOC. I'd also put Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib in that camp. So I think
but she's definitely right near the top of the most progressive representatives. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
One of them, but that also speaks to how not progressive Congress and the Democrats are.
Yeah, of course. You're right about that for sure. And by the way, before I was just going to mention that the jobs were lost this past month, 96,000 jobs.
We talked about that on the Friday's program. The economy is still definitely sputtering. It's definitely sputtering. 240-242-5646. Arlen, I like higher gas prices. I want gas prices to get higher and higher and higher. I've been talking about this for 20 years since you've known me. I've been saying this.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is with high gas prices, people are hurt. Working people are hurt. Middle-class people are hurt. And that's bad, and I don't like that at all. And I don't want them to be hurt. I want us to redistribute wealth from rich and powerful people to poor, struggling, working class people so that, on balance, the people at the bottom are at least as well off as they are now, if not somewhat better off, and the people at the top are much worse off. But to save the planet, we have to stop consuming fossil fuels. And I don't know how we can do that without raising the price of gasoline. I want to show this. This is from Climate Trace data. I was curious about this. The last year, full year, 25, again, we set yet another record despite all the efforts to embrace sustainable energy and cap greenhouse gas emissions and the Paris Accords and all that. 25, we had more greenhouse gas emissions than ever before. Obviously, that's going to exacerbate this world-destroying dynamic, which is global burning, Anthropocene age, the like. And just one other point, I wanted to show this other chart. You can also see from Climate Trace if there's an argument, well, 25, Trump was president, so that's why. You can look at the chart here. This is through 24. Trump was not president. You see in 2000, there was actually a blip downwards. We have never seen that. There was a blip downwards. That's COVID year. And then once Biden took office, each year got more, set a new record for most greenhouse gas emissions. So it doesn't matter, bipartisan, world destroyers.
Yeah, and absolutely. It's even worse with Trump because he openly says, hey, we've got to keep, pushing up the gas prices and, fossil fuel emissions and all this. He has no interest in environmental rules, windmills, anything that's, going to be helpful and not destroy the planet. He has no interest in it at all.
Well, I want to just throw in a plug for what I've always said we have to do, which is put high and ever higher taxes on fossil fuels, gas, coal, and the like. We should be looking at $20, $30, $40 a gallon gasoline. And if we did have that, first of all, nobody would be buying gasoline from Tehran. So we wouldn't care because we'd consume so little of it. But to the extent we are still consuming oil that's sold on the world market, a few 30, 40 cent rise in the price of the commodity would be irrelevant given how much the tax comprises the total price at the pump. So this is yet another huge benefit of high taxes on fossil fuels. There's far fewer upsets, far fewer shocks, because even when prices go up, the commodity price goes up. It's just a tiny little blip. It doesn't really impact in the relative price of the gasoline. So we must impose these taxes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on the taxes. I think that'd be a good idea. I think if you look at Europe and other countries, they have higher taxes. But, getting it through the American people, that's going to be nearly impossible because they just won't tolerate it. American people are just, so closed-minded. They just think, hey, if the price of gas goes up for any reason, then it's bad. Even
I
if
don't blame the people. I blame the leaders. I blame the legislators. They can vote for such a tax. They can impose it, and they can also rebate the tax collected to the American people so that there's a net benefit for people who don't consume a lot of energy. I really don't think it's this is explained, people understand why we're doing it, they would accept it.
Well, that's not going to happen because, the rich pretty much buy elections now. The Supreme Court said it's okay for them to buy elections, and they're doing it. So, so the American people, sure, they're going to go along with the idea that, gas prices need to be, ignored, or rather environmental solutions are not to be, really thought about. And we just got to keep pumping.
Yeah, and again, that's another bipartisan problem where Democrats barely talk about the environment either, unfortunately. 240-242-5646. Love to talk to you. Arlen, we've got about 15 minutes left in the program. I do want to pivot at some point to the Texas race. That's my last story. But are there issues or an issue, national, international, that either we haven't touched on or that we have touched on but not to the detail and depth that you would like?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that everything that Trump promised, economically is going downhill. So much of what, he said he would do, he's not doing. And then he was supposed to be the peace president. He was supposed to not get into, changing governments and changing, trying to change
Regime
administrations.
change, right. He's
regime
flat out
change,
said he would not be a regime change war president, and he
And
has
I think
been.
that,
You're correct.
and I think you were influenced by that, and that was one of the reasons you weren't as critical of him as other candidates, because he kept saying he's not going to go into, and he, in his first term he didn't go into too many other countries militarily. So he's totally reversing that now. And he, what he did in Venezuela, what he's doing now in Iran, and now he's even talking about Cuba. I mean, he's getting real excited about all these great things he could do with our military, but that's not good for the world.
Yeah, Arlen, that is all very fair. You also actually, and I just realized there was a third, fourth, I don't know, story that you had wanted to center that's international, and I forgot to put it in the deck, but I want you to talk about it. I'll see if I can find the actual story. That is Ukraine war not going the way Russia would like.
Oh, yeah.
What are the implications of that?
Yeah, for a long time there was the talk was, hey, Russia's eventually going to, win out. They're going to outlast the Ukrainians, but so far it's not happening. And Russia is paying tremendous costs in as far as people that are killed, and money that's being lost, and they're just not doing what they'd hoped they'd be able to do. And it'd probably be even worse for Russia were it not for Trump, who's not seemingly very partial toward the Ukrainians, not certainly as much as the Europeans are. So I think it looks to me like Ukraine can outlast the Russians. At least this guy thinks so, and I think there's good reason to believe it.
Well, at what cost, and what, if anything, should the United States and the United Nations and European countries do to try to stop more killing?
Well, we should have, President of the United States should be involved in that, and he's not. He's pretty much gone pro-Putin, and he's not interested in, he says bad things about the Ukrainian leader, Zelensky. So, I think Ukraine
what can we do? Because, see, to me, the goal is to have both sides stop killing each other. That's the immediate goal.
Yeah.
And when Biden was president, he supported he authorized billions and billions of dollars in weapon systems to Ukraine. And we heard at that time that the Ukraine, I remember the former listener to this program used to call and got very angry at me, thought I was, betraying Ukraine and we needed to support Ukraine. And I was a Putin puppet because I didn't take that position. But the argument was, well, Putin, in the end, Ukraine's going to win. That didn't happen either. And although you're right, Ukraine hasn't collapsed, still the war has not done well. They're not doing well either. I mean, it's been a disaster for both sides. So why hasn't it ended? Why is it not over?
Well, Hal, you and I have disagreed on this a lot. And, the most important fact of all of it is that Russia invaded Ukraine unnecessarily, without provocation, went in there and tried to take over the country. And they hoped to do it within, a few days or a week or something like that. But the Ukrainians were very strong about, standing firm and fighting back and being, doing some, the United States, has the power to give the Ukrainians more military, more weapons, and but Trump resists that because he seems to like Putin a lot. And the Europeans, they realize what's going on, and they know Russia has to be stopped. But without it makes it that much more difficult. So I don't see anything good about what Russia's doing, and Ukraine, I think, has every right to defend themselves.
Doesn't the fact that Russia cannot even defeat Ukraine, I think a country of maybe 35, 36 million people, belie any claims that Western Europe, Germany, which is like 80 million, 90 million people, France, 50, 60 million people, the UK, which has probably, I was talking about this with my son, like what countries have the most powerful militaries in the world? And I said, US 1, Israel 2. And he said, no. He said, UK is definitely a more powerful military than Israel's. And I thought, yeah, you're right about that. I'm wrong.
Well, it could
Spain
be
has a
the
powerful
Air
military.
Force.
I mean,
Yeah.
do you really think there are these countries that are, have anything really to fear when we see how Russia gets bogged down in Ukraine? Do they really have anything to fear from Putin?
Well, of course they do, because Putin could do what he did to Ukraine and go in and try to invade other countries. But if he's stuck in Ukraine, then that's a good thing.
But he hasn't been able to defeat Ukraine, and Ukraine is a weak country and it's small. And
that's the
UK
whole
and
point.
France are powerful, and Spain are powerful countries with big armies and navies and air forces.
Well, yeah, but that's the point. Ukraine has done great. They have a great leader. They're very determined to win, and then that's the only reason they're still there, is because they want to defeat the Russians and not have the Russians take over their country. Who could blame them? So I
mean, of course, but shouldn't we right now be trying again to not give Russia Ukraine? I don't think that's exactly Putin's goal. But certainly, I would assume we all share a goal of ending, maybe Trump doesn't, and maybe the Democrats don't. But I mean, I want people not to die. And it seems as though Trump has given up even trying to negotiate a peace. Maybe he tried a little bit, but didn't try that hard. It's a terrible tragedy. It's just
It's a terrible tragedy. Too many people are dying. But something, as long as Ukraine holds and stays, hurting the Russians, I think that's a good thing. You can't allow Russia to just go in there, invade the country, and take it over. So they've resisted that. The Europeans are resisting, and I think that's the best thing to do. I don't see any reason why.
Wouldn't the best thing,
Russia,
though, be to broker a peace settlement right now? Wouldn't that be the best thing, is to have
but what kind of peace
UN
settlement? What kind of peace settlement would it be? I mean, that's the crucial thing. If Russia gets 10% of Ukraine, maybe we could work something out like that. But Putin really wants a lot more, and I don't know what he would give up.
Yeah, I think the problem with that statement is we really don't know without intense negotiations, which probably the United States could really push if it tried harder. But Trump has tried, and Putin has seemed so resistant to anything. It's very, very it's very unfortunate. I just don't know what is possible here. And I mean, this is another, by the way, casualty of the war on Iran by Trump, is that to the extent that he was putting pressure on both sides to come to some kind of a agreement, that's not happening anymore.
By the way, there's just something I think that you probably did not see, but 60 Minutes over the weekend did a couple segments on that weapon. Remember, maybe 10 years ago in Cuba, Americans started, having problems with their brains were messed up, and something was happening to them, and nobody really knew what it was. You remember that?
No.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there were things going on where a lot of people were really hurting their brains, their all kinds of problems, and nobody really understood where it came from or where and who's doing it. Well, 60 Minutes has been investigating it the last maybe 8-9 years and putting a lot of research into it, and they think they understand it. It has something to do with microwaves. It is a weapon, and it came originally from Russia.
Some sort of microwave waves are causing us. Well, I'm going to look into that, Arlen. I'm very curious.
Yeah,
Let's
you
put that
should.
on the big picture report so we can talk about next week. That's
Okay.
very interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Ken just saying that Ukraine is, putting older soldiers out there because they've run out of troops. I mean, this has been a terrible, incredibly destructive war for both sides. There has to be a diplomatic solution, and the war in Iran has reduced the pressure from this administration on both sides, which is one more casualty of that war, on the totally pointless, destructive, harmful war. in Iran. 240-242-5646. All right, we got about 5 minutes left. I really wanted to center this story, Arlen, because as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I did say I would vote for Tallarico, and I thought he did run a good campaign. I may have mentioned this Friday. I'm not sure if I brought it up, but this is, to me, very, very troubling. This story that I should have known about but didn't. Wasn't really paying a ton of attention to before the election. So Tallarico got money from Miriam Adelson, the Zionist, the widow of Sheldon Adelson, the casino magnate, worth many billions of dollars. And a lot of criticism was lodged against Tallarico because he was taking money from Adelson, was considered to be pro-Israel money, Zionist money, what have you. Folks were saying, well, you criticize Crockett's people were saying you criticize Jasmine for not being strong enough against Israel. What about Tallarico taking money from Adelson? Looks like the reason he was getting that money had nothing to do with Israel. It was because he is one of the few pro-casino gambling voices in Texas. Texas is one of the best states, in my opinion, when it comes to keeping casinos out. Casinos are very harmful in many ways. They're regressive. They hurt poor people. They hurt working people. They are disproportionately harmful to black people. So casino gambling, in my opinion, is a terrible thing. We should try to get rid of it. I'm not saying you want to have a poker game in your house. Fine, low stakes, good. I think there can be reasons to have horse racing, as long as, again, relatively low stakes. Casino gambling is terrible. It's an octopus. It's a cancer. And Tallarico was one of the pro-casino gambling voices in the Texas legislature. I would not support James Tallarico for that reason.
I
want your take on that, Arlen. I want your take, but I also would just point out, I find this so dispiriting because, I always am critical of Democrats. This was a Democrat who had a message I liked. He had a message that he was on the side of the 99% against the 1%. It's the billionaires against everybody else, not red versus blue, but the billionaires against the top versus bottom. I love that message. But you're on the side of the top if you support casino gambling. And I know he gave the money back to Adelson, or he says he did, but he hasn't renounced his position on casino gambling. So for me, this is really, really a non-starter for me when it comes to supporting Tallarico. Your reaction, Arlen?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think if I'd known this, I might have thought twice about Tallarico winning. I really didn't care who won. I think they're both
You told us
good people.
that. You didn't care.
Yeah.
You didn't care.
Yeah, I mean, they're both good people, but this story that you got from Jacobin magazine comes out after the election. What good is it coming out after the election?
No. You could say to me, Hal, what good are you bringing it out after the election? But I believe this was in January. So it was post. I don't have the date up there, but I believe this came out in January. Is that not what your understanding is? Did you just look? Maybe it did come out.
I don't know. It's the first I've heard of it, and then I wonder why it's the first I heard of it. Why wasn't it brought out more? And apparently it's apparently not important or something, or it's just came out late. I don't know.
Dateline, I'll put that up there, but Dateline was November 13, 25.
Okay. Well, then the Crockett campaign did not do a good job of pointing that out because I didn't know anything about it.
Well, this is the thing. You're right. But what the Crockett campaign did is they tried to equate the support that Tallarico had gotten from Miriam Adelson as support for Israel because they know that that's not popular among the Democratic electorate in Texas, and because Crockett was getting criticized for her position, which was characterized, and I think correctly so, as too pro-Israel. So what Crockett was saying is, oh, no, you can't. If that's not fair, don't point fingers at me for being too pro-Israel. Look at what Tallarico's doing. He's taking money from, the Wicked Witch of the West, Miriam Adelson, which was true, but it was misleading because he was getting that money not as far as we can tell because he was pro-Israel, because he's not particularly pro-Israel. It was because he supported legalizing casino gambling in Texas, which would have been very, very profitable for Adelson. She could open a casino there.
Yeah, well, Tallarico, he's a smart guy, and apparently, he's not going to emphasize that kind of position. But overall, he seems to be pretty liberal and progressive on most issues, and seems to be, has a great personality, and he's a great campaigner. So yeah, I'm okay if he wins, because otherwise, you're just going to have more Republicans in the Senate. So if the Democrats could take a seat in Texas, that'll be great.
Well, I get everything you're saying there, Arlen, but for me, this is such a big, I have my litmus tests, and I guess I have a lot of them. One of them is supporting Israel. One of them is supporting wars, these kind of imperial wars, like or attacks like against Venezuela and Iran. And another is the casino industry. I view it as that harmful, that bad. And that regressive. By the way, there, I put the date up, so now everyone can see there, November 3rd. Took me a little bit of time, but I got it. But that is the correct date. So to me, what this says is this kind of proves what I often say is we have to look outside the Democratic Party for change. This party is just simply does not have the capability of taking on the billionaire class, even when you have a candidate like Tallarico with a really good message. In the end, you can't really trust him.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to it's the political system that's the problem, because you need big money to run a campaign to win an election in this country. And if Tallarico thinks he can get money from the gambling interests, well, I don't know if he really likes that, but he probably figures he has to win. I mean, it's just, there's just no perfect candidate, Hal. They have to do what they can to win, as long as it's not, going into Iran and killing everybody. So yeah, but anyway, I hope he does well. I hope he wins, and I feel bad, like you, that he's that indebted to the gambling interest. But he's not the first, and won't be the last.
Arlen, it's always great to have you on. And you do get the last word. I am not going to respond to what you just said beyond what I've already said in today's program, but I will let you promote another story or give folks some, a last pearl of wisdom.
Well, I think they should definitely go on my political website, which is thebigpicturereport.com, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking or what I'm thinking at that particular moment. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you so much, Arlen. Thanks to all the viewers, comments in the chat. Greatly appreciated. I say to everyone, thank you for being part of Halitics. And I will be back Wednesday. Remember, no Halitics tomorrow. You can obviously check out my ever-growing catalog of back Haliticses. We'll be back Wednesday. Enjoy your afternoon.